give us a legislative update. We told you last month that we'd come back with an administration recommendation for food trucks. We'll do that also. We have one tax exemption by designation to discuss. And then lastly, John Ramstein will give us an update on some additional scope renovations. As you're aware, that's been an ongoing process, and he has one more item to bring to council. We have one closed session item today.
Okay, well, why don't we do council interest, Brian? Hold on just a second, and then we'll get to you. Mr. Riddick, you got it.
Yeah, I see that we're gonna start talking about, I guess, the northern portion of Granby Street. And I would like to, us to bring a discussion in on Church Street. You know, Church Street used to be, you know, one of the vibrant business districts of Norfolk, African American primarily. But when our predecessors, when Paul framed you and your guys, 4-lane Church Street, that eliminated.
I was just a child.
Yeah, that eliminated. Yeah, that eliminated a lot of the businesses. We have a lot of really nice land there, so let's kind of look at that as well. I want to make I don't know if you should say sort of a correction. Last time we met, and I said that the water bill was the city manager's slush fund. I didn't even mean you. I meant you and your predecessors. You inherited that, but I really want us to get an opportunity to look at the water bills because, you know, I get calls about them all the time, and I'm just wondering if there are any duplications when we have wastewater collection and then we pay HRSD something for wastewater treatment and stormwater. Water is really the most reasonable thing you get, but it's all of the tag-ons, you know, that are killing people. And with the paycheck being smaller because of the recent increase in deductions on the federal level, if there's anything that we can do on this end that makes sense, I want us to look at it. That's it.
Okay, a couple things. I guess I asked the manager, when are we going to get a kind of a progress report on this the arts district and what we're thinking, where we're heading? I know we had a lot of article in the paper. We're going to get a presentation on where and when and a timetable or?
Yes, Councilman, there are two things that are going on. As you will recall, we did talk about it at the retreat in September. Since that time, staff have been working internally, externally, even with people in that particular community, businesses. And in my opinion, for the first time, I believe we have a better understanding of some of the issues. So our goal was to bring something to you this spring.
When is spring over in your mind?
We can do something in April time frame. Yes.
All right.
Well, Barclay and I talked about this, and we'd like to see at least an ordinance come out to announce that area's been designated. I mean, it may not need to have plans and what we're going to do, but to really get this identified before. When's the better block? Isn't that mid-April?
Yes.
And so if we don't have a identification that that's part of this thrust with this, I mean, don't we feel we need to demonstrate our commitment to this?
I don't disagree with you. One of the issues is that we could designate it, but there are also some other elements that come with an arts district, and we had a brief conversation about that, is that we'd like to make sure that at least we do the proper framework of what would be some of those other assets, for lack of a better term, that come with an arts district.
And there's one key issue, and the Planning Commission has a role in this, because while we might be able to designate the district, some of the uses that we might expect would be in the district aren't uses that are allowed right now. So we have to look at some new zoning uses.
So April.
Yes.
Another thing, as we get into the budget, and we know that money's going to be short, I hope we're still actively pursuing taking surplus properties, be they schools, vacant land, whatever, off the tax rolls and into economic development. I know there's land in Berkeley, there's Meadowbrook School, there's several schools. There's a lot of property that's not only not income producing, but not in its best use. I mean, do we have somebody, I guess economic development, I know we have city sites, and they're all on there, but are we marketing it? Are we just hoping somebody will come knock on the door and, you know,
No,
buy?
It is the former, but it's a more collaborative process now where we have planning at the table, development at the table, public works at the table, as opposed to something that was limited to just a development discussion.
And we've asked the school system to identify their surplus properties, and there's a lot of money out there. And I'm not sure we've ever gone after selling it or making income producing as hard as we can. The last thing is, Saturday, I had an opportunity to stop by the animal care facility, and if y'all have not been out there, it's unbelievable what's happened out there on almost no money. I don't think there's some volunteer staff who work tirelessly. It's first class. I mean, it's not a brand new facility, but it's been retrofitted, and everybody ought to take a look, as we get criticized roundly for the way we take care of our pets and what have you. It's a very refreshing to go through there. And I applaud all the work for the volunteers and all the staff, and a number of people out there, and Bob and David. I mean, it's a dedicated group out there, and I don't think I'm sure I didn't realize it. I'm sure probably some others don't either. So, that's all I have.
I almost left with a bunny.
Yeah.
Yeah, they almost had me sold on a white bunny. Yeah.
It's incredible. It's incredible how
I
that
was gonna
started
give it to
around.
Terry as a gift.
As long as there's only one.
It was neutered.
That's all.
Terry, Dr. Luke.
I was spoken to Ann, but I'm just going to bring this up again because I really think we have a sense of urgency. We have been working on closing the streets policy downtown for a long time. We've got springtime coming. We need to have it in place so we've got some facilities. And as it is now, because it's in process, some groups that previously would have been able to have street closure can't because we're not issuing any new permits. So we really are curtailing this inappropriately.
I hope that the one that you're talking about, that we're buying,
Okay.
that project will go
Good.
on.
Well, I hope
Yes.
that, and I hope there's nothing else. That was
Right.
Virginia Stage.
Exactly.
And then secondly,
I'm
similarly,
sorry, that was the what?
Virginia
Virginia Stage
Stage
Company.
wanted to have an event and they couldn't get a permit because we had now said nobody could have a permit. Similarly, the plot, whether or not we move ahead on that area, we're gonna have that there this spring for this season. And we've got a lot of people that put in a lot of work on that plot. And we need to make sure the specifications for permitting are in place so that that can be utilized to its fullest. So I hope we can see that happen again in early spring.
You know, I agree with Terry, certainly, especially the plot. We need, rather than just, I don't know how to say it, the stage company wants to use that street in front of theirs, is that what they want to do, to separate it? Well, I mean, I guess what we need is a policy, maybe that's what Terry,
That's what we're
and
talking
it, I mean, it just, closing down Granby Street, you can do that on 2 or 3 times a year, whenever you want to, because of what it does to other people, but, I mean, we need to have, you can't just have some club decide to come, they want to come down there and shut down a street. Stage company makes sense to me. An adjacent landowner makes sense to me, who, for a purpose that, but we need a policy. There's got to be, instead of on an ad hoc basis, a policy, and we need some way to pull all this together. All these, like the Granby Street sessions, or the sessions with these side streets, or the closings, but to somehow make the thing bigger. We've talked about tree lights, and we talked about trying to make the streets more attractive. It just, I guess Ron and Ann are working on that, but it's more than just closing one street, because then they're going to want to find out what can they put on the street, what can they, but we ought to be friendly about this. We ought to encourage this stuff, I think. And sometimes written materials make people feel encouraged. This is what you can do. Here are the parameters. And it ought to be, anyway,
Anthony. three things. One, for the last couple of years, I've been talking about lights on Granby Street. And for the love of it, we can't seem to accomplish that. What's the issue there? Why can't we, you got one block of lights. So, the notion that we can't be the issue because we have lights on Granby Street. And then you go another block, we're not uniformed and it looks awful.
But we're actually in the stage right now, and I guess this is RFP to get a professional in it here to help us address that very issue. Yes, sir.
The second thing I wanted to say is, next week we'll have the MEAC in town, and I want to, again, thank John Ramstein for everything he's done to leading up to this tournament to ensure that we've done everything on the ground that we could do possibly to make the city of Norfolk shine. And, whether it be his meetings monthly or starting way back into some, bringing all of the teams in. The banners look good throughout the city in areas that I've seen them. And it's impressive to know that we're open for business. Talked to Karen Scherberger as it relates, to the Jazz Festival and, going to be marketing that during the MEAC tournament. And so, John, I just want to thank you, man, because you've done a tremendous job in getting the city ready for MEAC. And the third thing I want to, I spoke with Ann last week. And, like I said, there's a lot of positive activity that's taking place out in the Wards Corner area. But where there's an action, there's a reaction. Last week I wanted to know where, in terms of working with the Hart team in these various places, where were these people, where were the opportunities presenting themselves for these people to move? And when she first gave me the list, of course there were Ward 3 and Ward 4. Areas of Berkeley, Belle Diamond, Summerlin Terrace, places like that, that we're trying to disperse poverty and give people real opportunity. And so, again, absence of a housing policy, we have to ensure that in our efforts to build up communities, that we don't adversely affect other communities or wards. Because if we're playing musical chairs, again, then we're not solving a problem at all. Now, since then, I saw that they've added opportunities for these families other areas of the city. But again, in terms of that price point, whether they meet that price point or not, these people $400 and $500, there are so many places that offer that rent rate. That they can rent. They're not going to get Section 8 vouchers because there's a backup waiting list as it relates to Section 8 vouchers. And so I just think it's a very sensitive issue. One of the things that and I've been involved in, situations where we had to move people, whether it be Moulton Circle or Broad Creek. And one of the things that I'm always concerned about is young people, kids. Moving these young people in the middle of a school year, it has an adverse effect on the young person. Trying to get a kid in a new school, parent can't continue to send them to that school because the bus is not going to come and bring that kid to that particular school. So he has to transfer to another school in the middle of the year with a couple of months to go. And so although we are acquiring these properties, and I said this last time I was here, that what's waiting a few months to tear these properties down or to vacate the individuals from the units so that these young people can finish out the school year and that part of their life not be interrupted. Along with that, you have the opportunity, I know that you say the city don't want to get in the landlord business, but at the same time, in order for us to close on some of these deals, you have to have all of these people out. And so if we did that, then the city saves a little money if you gave a person 3 to 4, 5, or even 6 months of free rent or you collected the rent and then you saved it, put it in an escrow account for them and gave it back to them to relocate and move somewhere and have a couple of months rent and have some cushion, that would help. Because if the city is if we're gonna be moving these families, I think that we have a responsibility to ensure that not only that we move them not into a dire straight situation that they're already in, because we're moving them because we're talking about the same things we're doing in other communities. Dispersing poverty, giving people a real opportunity, and allowing these communities to be successful. And so I think we have to bring to bear all of the resources that we have available to us. Schools, okay, as well as the other teams that you guys have put together now. Your team has been working diligently. You know, been doing a good job. But those are a few things that we have not done well because we're not in the business of doing that. And so Norfolk Redevelopment and Housing Authority should be a part of this equation some way, as well as Norfolk Public Schools. Because if a kid is in school and in the middle of testing, we're moving people, we shouldn't be doing that. That's my 2 cents.
Marcus, could you provide us with a graph on, was it 37 units? Is that many
Yes.
units? 37?
Yes.
How many were vacant and how many were occupied?
Sure.
How many children there were in each, in the units?
I got that.
You know,
Ann gave me that information.
You got that information?
Yeah.
Because I think this notion about moving these children, if in fact there's some children that are moving from schools to schools, is something we ought to really take to heart. I mean, I wouldn't want to move them during the school year for sure. I mean, so, maybe there needs to be some sophisticated strategy about all of this. When we did that in Lafayette Shores, we would, we really just we went door to door. We knew who everybody was, and I guess we've done that. Know who every resident is, what their needs are, what their abilities are. Actually, the fact of the matter is, we improved the lives of those people in Lafayette Shores 30 years ago, and I would expect we'll be doing the same thing here at the end of the day. But we just have to be sensitive to it and make sure we get it done the right way without damaging some households. Okay, I agree. All right. Okay.
Just a couple of things. A few months ago, and it might have even been in the summer, I asked about the possibility of getting lighting in the bus stops, HRT, in the shelters. And I'd like to find out if that is something, I'd like some kind of update on it. It's not that, well, it's still bad in the winter, in the summer, but it doesn't get dark until 9 o'clock in the summer. But in the winter, those shelters are very dark. And so it would be nice if over the spring and summer months, we could work to get lights, even if they're solar lights and they doesn't require electrical wiring or anything like that, and they come on when the lights go out, and they build up solar energy throughout the day. But those shelters are very, very dark. You drive past them and it's just awful to see people sitting there in the dark at night waiting for the bus or whatever. And also, could we get an update on derelict structures year to date? What we've done, where we are, what we have in process, how much we spent, all of that, and the various areas that are utilizing that. That's good.
Okay. I have some things about HRT too. And the ones down at Pretlow that they put in, they did put solar lights up on them so that the panels are there and they're pretty well lit at night.
Okay.
So they're working, maybe they're trying it out.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
John,
I would like an update on HRT. Driving through Virginia Beach, I've noticed that Virginia Beach has gotten all of the new signs. A lot of their bus stops have been replaced with the new ones, and I'm just sitting waiting for Norfolk and when they're going to come in and start replacing the ones in Norfolk. So it would be nice to have an update on that, and I'm just hoping that they didn't stop and they're just doing, I think you said we contribute more to HRT than any other city.
I think it's 40% of their whole budget.
See, I would have started in Norfolk and then worked out to other cities doing that. The other thing that came up from a group of citizens, and then I noticed it in about a year ago, and Public Works has done a good job with this. I brought up about replacing old signs and things and trying to make, little things like that make our city look better. And I've noticed that some of those signs have been replaced. So then I started looking at other things, and I know Parks and Rec does the medians, but we have parts of the city, say like the Tidewater Drive underpasses, that have fences that are just rusted, and I don't know who's responsible for it, but I think that, and I totally believe in neighbors building neighborhoods and getting the community out and doing this, but I think sometimes there's little projects that could go a long way with how we look to other people when they come from the city. And I'm wondering if we had a team of people that could drive around and just find places like these rusty fences that just maybe need a coat of paint. They don't have to be replaced. Just, paint them black, so they blend in, or silver, whatever you want to color them. And just looking at places, I look at Lake Wright in the golf course where their driving range is, and it's covered in, vines, and half of it's hanging down. Can we put some pressure on to get that, looking good? These are gateways into the city, and it just, a citizen kind of brought it up, and then I started looking and noticing. I'm wondering if a team of people could just drive around and try to identify little things like that that would go a long way. And then the last thing is an update on staff with you. We usually get periodic flow charts, but now we have phone numbers that have changed and things like that. So if somebody in communications or Lori, if we can get another flow chart and find out who your new people are. You introduced some of them, but in all the departments, just so we can see who they are, and also an updated phone log that we used to get those pretty regularly because of changes. Just so if we need to make a quick phone call to somebody, we can.
That's it. Just one other thought about the Arts District. I know you said it'll be here in April, but maybe sometime in one of these 2 o'clock meetings in March, and whatever, towards the end of March, we could, maybe, I think it'd be good to have a long discussion here at the council level, so we all understand exactly have some idea what you're gonna propose here, and I think we do, but I think the council really needs to embrace this, and I wanna feel energetic about it, so we can all get off on the same foot, understanding that, this is what we're trying to accomplish. I don't know if you've got a budget in mind, or how you're gonna get there from where where you're gonna take us, and how we're gonna get there, and who's gonna do it, all that sort of stuff. But if we're gonna get out on this thing, and I think most of us think we should, we ought to make sure it succeeds, and really get behind this effort. I'm willing to do that, but we all gotta get off on the same foot, I think, at some point. So then we can come back in April, maybe start adopting ordinances, if that's what you've got. There's a resolution which we've proposed, which appoints 31 persons to the Mayor's Commission on Poverty Reduction. Breck is going to circulate it. Several members of the council volunteered. I've actually asked people who volunteered the most, I guess, maybe Andy and Angela, but trying to make sure that it stayed diverse, but I think we have 4, maybe 5 people who said they wanted to work on it, but we had to keep it to 2. So that's with you tonight. But if you look at the names, it's a great list of people. But Marcus, we need absolutely world-class staff here. I mean, I don't know who's gonna do this, but somebody actually has got to identify the issue. And it can't be somebody from some other city like we brought in last time, but not only do you need 1 or 2 really good staff people here, but maybe a consultant, or I don't know how you want to do this, but you got to identify that, somebody who could say, here's what the poverty is, and here's what our goal is, and here's where the pockets of poverty are, and here's how we define poverty, and I know Richmond has produced a report.
Yes.
That might be worth circulating, because they had an anti-poverty commission there, so people can see how they've gone about it. Actually, it got pretty good reviews in the press up there, I think, in the editorial page. And if we picked out 5 or 6 things to try to do, that would be important, but we need really good staff for this thing, okay? So, and I don't know who's out there who might help guide this effort, but it would have to be somebody who has, been through something like this, I think.
So the
okay?
goal of this committee is to come back with 5 or 6 recommendations.
Well, I mean, it might take, I'd like to, I didn't look at the Richmond report yet. I don't know if the goal is 5 or 6, but I'm gonna let those people try to work it out to see what they can do. I mean, if they came, in my mind, if they came back with 5 or 6 things that we could go to work on, I mean, I know there are gonna be a lot of issues out there.
So you're gonna hire a consultant outside of this committee to,
Just to lead the discussion
where are you gonna pull your data from?
from the city.
Do you have that type of data?
Yes, at demographer, we'll be able to pull raw data for you, and we can put it together in any set that you'd like to see. And some of that we've already prepared for council, and we can circulate that again.
Brett, can you get Andy my contact information for all these people?
No, I gotta say, I was concerned about this, when you first did.
I know.
And I mean, it's, me and Mr. Riddick, as ward people, I mean, you don't have to go far to, and Tommy has some areas, I mean, you served the entire city, so I mean, but to identify, we can tell you what these areas are all day. The question is, how long, is this supposed to be a year?
Yeah.
6 months?
A year, and give us a report, and then we can receive it and decide how to act on it. But it's a concentrated effort on how we can reduce poverty in the city of Crawford.
And this is gonna take a snapshot. I mean, I know the school is doing a study now, talking about, looking at changing the attendance zones, looking at poverty, and looking at, various neighborhoods and community. Tommy, what's that study that they're working on?
It's actually their census.
It's just demographic.
Demographic.
They're doing the demographic.
But I thought they were digging a little deeper
Well,
than,
Basically, school-age children where they are.
right, they're looking to see where the population's growing with school-age children. This is a demographer study.
that's it? They're not looking at,
They want to, I think they do want to try to balance out the schools more and not have pockets of poverty in schools.
right,
Yeah.
I mean, that's
Terry, that's your understanding too?
But I also think they're trying to level the number of kids in the schools. I
Right,
mean, you
yeah.
got one school out there that's good, you got 219 children in it, and you
Right.
got a school that's got
600 right next door.
650. I mean, but I mean, so it's a little different than what we're trying to get at here.
But they are looking at, there's a proposal to look at the poverty of some of the schools too and concentrating poverty in schools.
you look at the number of African Americans, they make up 67% or so of the school system, and then you look at the number of Title I schools. And I always think you can meet people where they are, but I thought that, a part of that, I was hoping a part of that, and I hope a part of this could be that when you look at areas and you look at where these Title I schools are, a good indicator is how you disperse poverty, give people real opportunity, put resources in the community, whereas you disperse and you start losing Title I schools. So we have how many Title I schools?
And some of the middle schools are eligible, but they haven't taken it. I think they're going to try to do that, but
I look at this, and I hope it's successful, but as Mr. Burford said, I have lived around, well, he didn't say this, but I have lived around poverty all my life. I've never lived in poverty, I've never been in poverty, but I've lived around poverty. When I walk on my front porch in the morning, I see poverty. And I see, and I know what it takes to get rid of poverty. It takes jobs, it takes training, it takes character development. We have a blue chip, list of people here, but sometimes you don't have to go that far.
Yeah, and I don't think anybody would intend to do anything other than, Paul, what you and Anthony have alluded here. I mean, it's just sort of concentrate the attention on that. We have It's a couple 100,000 jobs in the city of Norfolk, but we have the highest unemployment rate in the region, one of the highest in the Commonwealth. Why can't we get more people working in Norfolk, in jobs that are right here in the city to lower that?
One of the things I mentioned at this table a few weeks ago is that we have all of this construction going on, but these contractors are bringing their own people in. We're building a aquatic center, $7 million over on Campusella Road, and some of the people who just want to be common laborers who lived across the street, who could walk to work, who could go home for lunch, save bus fare, couldn't get hired. So the way we do business is one way, is to improve it. We're getting ready to build some schools. We're getting ready to do some other things. And so this is how we approach, that aspect of it.
This would be an attempt to identify all of that, put down in writing.
Well, I mean, short of doing this, I hope, and this is one of the things I found out. I mean, we have 243 plus thousand people live in this city. I don't know what the number of adults are, but we have a number of folk who are convicted felons who can't get jobs within the city, who make up a part of that unemployment piece. As I said last week, just like we have this initiative to hire 17% of veterans. I think that, again, to begin to keep score, to also look at, trimming out that other population that I spoke with or sample as it relates to Norfolk citizens, young people who have gone to school here and have come back and want to live, want to raise a family in this community. You talked about that the other day, about them exerting themselves in the political process, whether it be through volunteering or boards and commissions, but also along with that, being able to provide, opportunities or jobs, that these kids go off to school and come back and want to participate right here in this community. So we lose a lot of talent that go outside the city, whether it be police officers or otherwise, to be able to harness that talent right here and capture that. So I just hope that at the end of the day, that when this is all said and done, that, I know job, like Mr. Riddick said, job training, putting the infrastructure in place for people to be ready for the jobs that exist within this city, knowing who lives in this city and knowing what they're lacking as individuals. Why can't the people in this community find gainful employment with the opportunities that exist, whether it be construction or otherwise? What's the Builders TBA had a program where they took individuals and put them in a program, and then they were skilled to be able to take advantage of some of these opportunities. Housing market is coming back. And so again, those are the types of things that I hope we look at to allow these young people to have some sort of skill to be able to at least start that process of gainful employment. And so
Any member of council is welcome to come to any meeting. So,
I mean, I think it's a valiant effort, but at the end of the day, when it's all said and done, I hope it yields results that we can all say, okay, we've moved the needle.
That's the idea. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, council. The manager's been kind enough to give me 10 minutes to give you a quick briefing on the updates relating to the 2013 General Assembly session. I will be moving forward at a breakneck pace, but if there's any questions I could attempt to answer, I'd be happy to do so at any time. The overview of this presentation is there's no specific action being requested of council tonight. We're just giving you an update on each of the city's legislative requests and priorities as they currently stand now that session has concluded and the governor is now considering General Assembly legislation that has been passed. I'm going to talk about the timeline between now and the reconvened session, as well as these bills that are passed by the General Assembly and approved by the governor actually come into play effective July 1. So there are sometimes consequences, sometimes there's benefits. And then we will try to articulate the administration's recommended next steps. As you know, we had 4 legislative requests this year. Very quickly, we were attempting to get the state to embrace and actually help implement the VIMS report. This is the Virginia Institute of Marine Science report that Council worked last year with the partnership of Delegate Stolle and Senator Northam, as well as the rest of our delegation, to have the Virginia Institute of Marine Science really take an honest look at recurrent flooding patterns and identify those strategies for addressing these issues. There wasn't an enormous amount of specific information that was over and above those recommendations we had already had identified, but what was very telling was the recommendations that were contained relating to the need for additional statewide coordination and assistance with pulling together the relevant information. So we are continuing in our dialogue with the governor's administration and relevant secretariats to identify that path forward. We've got the Hampton Roads Planning District Commission involved with the other Eastern Shore and Tidewater planning districts to really develop a path forward for actually getting at some of the questions that were raised and some of the recommendations that were advanced. So there really was not enough time to pursue a legislative remedy, if you will, this session. The VIMS report wasn't issued until, I believe, 2 days before session started. However, this has been a great opportunity to socialize the issue a little bit more specifically with senior ranking General Assembly members as well as cabinet secretaries, and the administration feels we have materially made a difference in advancing our timeline, and we'll be bringing you back a separate report on what we exactly are doing to accomplish this goal at a later time. Secondly, we had established as a city our second legislative priority this session being the funding of the Intercity Passenger Rail and Operating and Capital Fund. What we heard from federal agencies, Federal Railroad Administration, et cetera, is that it really was difficult, if not impossible, to really take our trains and what we have communicated as our goal, and that is a frequent and reliable passenger train system, to the next level. We had an authority established, but no funding mechanism in place. I would like to tell council that I do not blush to say that it is the city of Norfolk, in partnership with Virginians for High-Speed Rail, as well as the Hampton Roads for Rail coalitions, that worked tirelessly to advance this as a priority initiative. We've got 2 representatives from both what I would call grassroots organizations, representing Hampton Roads for Rail, which is a subsidiary that was recently created of Virginians for High-Speed Rail, is Mark Jones, who handles a lot of our press releases as well as Facebook inputs. We had a lot of different lobby days that came up where we actually had citizens from Norfolk and other places who are interested in advancing passenger rail as a priority initiative. And so thanks to Mark and Virginians for High-Speed Rail. We also have our good friend Will Christopher here, who is the director of the Hampton Roads Public Transit Association, who is also trying to get organized. This organization's been created with the help of former Councilman Randy Wright, and this again is an advocacy arm in partnership with HRT to really put at the forefront the issue of a dedicated transit funding source that's substantial enough to put us in a position to achieve what we're hoping to achieve as it relates to a robust transit system, as well as that includes light rail expansion and other types of areas related to public transportation. Third, we had a city charter amendment to change the mayor election cycle so that it coincided with the Super Board election starting 2016. So this was passed unanimously by the General Assembly. We don't see the governor having a reason to weigh in to make any changes necessarily. So what this ultimately means is effective for the 2014 mayor election, that term will run for a 2-year term. It will end after the 2-year term ends, effective 2016 cycle. It goes back into the 4-year term, and you have essentially leveled out your local elections from that point forward.
Hold that thought, Brian.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
Barnard, we've been getting these, or maybe I've been getting, I'll put it that way, I've been getting these petition signatures against this, barring the Justice Department approval. That's all that's required of us. Is that not correct? Once the General Assembly approves it, and then the Justice Department has to approve it also? Is that correct? There's no other legal action required. Is that right?
I'm sorry, I was reading when you started your question.
I'm getting all these petition signatures against the change to the mayoral election cycle. And so my question is, barring any action from the governor, the only other thing that has to happen is that it has to be approved by the Justice Department, and there's
Yes.
nothing else that we have to do, correct?
That is correct, right. There's no action for the council.
Things are actually going all the way back
Yeah, that's,
to the
back
mayoral,
to
to the
general.
citywide mayoral.
yeah, that's
Okay.
really about the citywide mayoral.
That's really, I don't think that's
It's
focusing
not
on
about
this.
this at all.
Right.
It's not
Well, there's
focusing
new
on.
No, it is.
signatures
They're
because
start-
there's
yeah.
a whole new
All of it
petition.
now.
They're putting it
Yeah.
all, and the guy that came and spoke at council,
Roy
is,
Perrinet?
yeah,
Yeah.
he also sends us the updated letters to,
Some kind of way,
Department
we're
houses.
on the response
Yeah.
mailing, yeah, so
he's the one
whenever
who did the
somebody does
petition
that,
back
You
up.
should know, he filed a lawsuit
right,
some time ago that was dismissed
Right.
by the federal government. So this is,
He filed it
I
through
just wanna
his
make-
daughter.
he filed what?
He filed it through his
Christine
daughter.
Perry Bennett.
That's right.
I just wanna make sure that we're good,
We're good, yes.
okay.
Our last legislative request this session, council, was what we discovered through implementation of our public art program is that the state identified that we were technically operating out of compliance by directly contracting with public artists for the design, construction, and ultimate installation. The compromise that we sought was to still require for public art that's $1,000 in value or more or fixed, that the installation of that public art would still have to be accomplished by a Virginia licensed general contractor. So we could stipulate through the contract and the procurement process that that's a condition of going forward with the project. And at the same time, we still are protecting the state's interest to make sure that the right folks who are qualified to do this type of work are the ones who are actually responsible for seeing it through. Moving on, we had 5 legislative priorities this session. Before going any further, council, I want to say that it really makes life a lot easier up during General Assembly session when things are moving quickly to have a clearly articulated position of council so that we can react quickly and maneuver. So in every one of these legislative requests, or priorities, I should say, we were right in the middle of the action, right in the coalitions and the task force that were organized to either push particular legislation or defeat specific legislation. The first one, our number one priority this session, was to defeat efforts to lift the current uranium mining moratorium. Council, this was a very time-consuming, tough issue. The folks that were trying to advance lifting the moratorium were very well funded and had lots of resources that our coalition didn't have access to. However, what we did have was a strong partnership and a fidelity with one another to achieve a specific mission. We were working as a city in partnership with a larger coalition, but here back home, actually, we were interfacing directly thanks to the help of Denise Thompson, as well as the chair of the Norfolk Environmental Commission here, Ron Wilson, came actively involved working this issue. I wish I had better news to say that we don't have to worry about this issue coming back. Unfortunately, most of the folks that are on the inside on this issue are predicting that Virginia Uranium Mining, Inc. will in fact be making a second attempt to push forward legislation to lift the moratorium this coming session. So we will continue our efforts to work in a large partnership to prepare ourselves. There has been some question over the establishment of the new nuclear regulatory agency and whether or not that has some type of applicability to backdooring, if you will, uranium regulations. We've been told by a lot of the folks and the patrons directly that were involved in this that was not the goal or the aim, but we are cautiously optimistic in our efforts to continue to monitor the situation and prepare for next General Assembly session, which also will include an enhanced partnership with our Board of Commissioners over the Norfolk Environmental Commission. Second legislative priority, we were looking for to support legislative efforts to meaningfully address what we determined to be deficiencies in the 1995 Public-Private Transportation Act that's governing these PPTAs. I did the last poll just to make sure that I had my facts and figures right. Mostly all of the substantial bills dealing with PPTA that really got at the local governance issues that we raised in our package were killed or stricken. There's a couple that are in play dealing with appointments to the board, but where we stand as it stands right now is that I can report back to you that this General Assembly session provided us a very reasonable opportunity to further advance our issues relating to how PPTA is employed and what Norfolk's specific experience has been through the PPTA process. We have every reason to believe that folks both at the state level as well as Virginia Port Authority better understand where it is the localities that are hosting these large operations are coming from. As a matter of fact, we have been given assurances as well as both patrons that were involved in a budget amendment that this session, both Delegate Joanno as well as Senator Kenny Alexander, and we're going to continue to have the dialogue at some future point. That the idea is that the leadership of the different port host communities would sit down with the Virginia Port Authority and the state folks to really figure out how we can meaningfully get at this. Most everyone knows what the issues are. It's been highlighted and documented by JLARC themselves, and all we're really attempting to pursue is a fair and equitable compromise on the issues that we raised as it relates to not only governance structure, but also funding and impact fees. Third, we support legislative efforts to meaningfully provide sufficient, consistent, and reliable transportation funding. In your Dropbox, I have provided a copy of the actual conference report that goes with as much detail as you want. You also have a line-by-line of every amendment that was made to HB 2313, which was the Speaker's bill, that is ultimately the transportation bill. There's some things going on in the press relating to whether or not this is going to be workable or not. We have until the reconvene session to kind of figure out what those issues of concern might be for us specifically. Preliminarily, we've identified within the bill that there is a maintenance of effort requirement that really is causing us some level of concern. Also, Council, what's different about the treatment of Northern Virginia and Hampton Roads as it relates to our regional taxes that will be generated is that we have a specific restriction not to be able to allow it for transit funding purposes. So whether or not that's constitutional, there's some folks at the Washington Post editorial that thinks that it is not. We will continue to monitor that activity closely and continue to advance Council's objectives. However, I do think that this is a step in the right direction, that some real money was identified, and the upwards of $200 million annually that has been identified for Hampton Roads will provide additional flexibility and options for the region to pursue those TPO prioritized projects that have already been identified. Fourth, we were working in a large partnership with a lot of advocacy coalitions to oppose these efforts to further shift K through 12 funding. While I'd like to say that we did stop what we thought was coming, there were some modest changes here and there on how things were moving forward. The biggest piece that was occupying the legislation that was occupying most of the General Assembly members' times had to do with this proposal to create a statewide school district. And essentially, if you were a school that was not accredited, that was the triggering authority to allow the state to come in and essentially take over your school districts. We worked in this larger coalition to get in favorable amendments to what I would say take some of the teeth out of that legislation. And while there was $150,000 identified for the actual implementation, speaking with Senator Kenny Alexander, who allowed his original bill to be rolled in with Senator McDougal, really the intent is to provide funding for access to experts to come in and take a look at these specific schools to identify specific recommendations on how to improve test scores, et cetera. So we also have a JLARC study that's moving forward. It's going to take a look at the balance of the cost structure, who's paying for what at the state level and who's paying for what at the local level. Moving on quickly, and I bring this, we supported legislative efforts to allow qualifying localities the authority to operate licensed casino gaming. And we got a councilman who surprised me. It was like 6:30 at night, and he shows up for our committee hearing and testified in support. This is the kind of legislation in which going in, you have a very, very high number of members that you have to convince. I would say that, for lack of a better term, analogy, we did what we could to make lemonade out of lemons. And we've had the study of casino gaming, what the revenue impacts would be, and what the potential uses would be, referred to the Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization. That is a creature of the state, so they could accept the actual study request, and that'll be considered coming up here in March. And if implemented as envisioned by the original patron delegate, our Senator Louise Lucas, we really can kind of use this as an opportunity to better make our case in preparation for the next General Assembly session to see if we would have the ability to convince the General Assembly to give us authority to operate casino gaming. Now, I got a little pushback with putting this slide in here, giving myself an A. It really isn't me, but in totality, if you look in the aggregate, all of the legislative requests and priorities that we spelled out, we materially accomplished the majority, if not all, of what Council had set up for the administration to accomplish this General Assembly session in partnership with our delegation. They really did as much as they could to provide access, to listen to what it is that was concerning us as the developments were going on. And the administration feels pretty good about the success that was achieved. So moving forward, where we are now as far as the legislative timeline is now the governor's office is busy reviewing all the past legislation, just as we are. And we're scheduled for the reconvened or veto session to occur April 3rd. So we have between now and then to advance smartly any of these changes that we might feel make some sense. We'll get back to council pretty quickly with any and all of those areas that we've identified. There's a few that we've identified preliminarily, but session just concluded on Saturday, so we need a little bit more time to kind of work through all of the different elements. So now the governor is working to either accept, reject, or suggest amendments to the General Assembly, and the General Assembly can come back and either concur or they can not concur. And there we are on these bills that passed, effective once approved by the governor, July 1st, 2013. In most cases, will be the effective date of the new legislation. Our recommended next steps will be to continue to monitor the legislative developments relating to Norfolk's legislative requests and priorities. Where it's appropriate, we will advance some recommendations for specific amendments to the governor as it relates to these particular bills. And there's a couple ongoing legislative activities that's going to continue on past the year, dealing with flood mitigation and how we get the state more involved, PPTA governance, as well as public education. And there will be some staff level effort to shepherd along this further study of casino gaming as it's contemplated by the HRTPO board. I'm out of time, but I'm happy for any questions.
Can you talk a little bit about the general fund money being diverted for public education? Because just from what I read in the paper, it seemed like it happened, but that it's being replaced at later years with possible revenue coming in from internet sales.
Correct.
And I'm just shocked that this made it through, that we're building roads over schools in a sense. And my other concern is with the 2% voodoo politics raises for teachers, and that in reality it actually becomes more of an expense on the school districts because the 2% isn't necessarily funding all positions, it's just the FTE teachers, and it's a match. So I believe in the budget presentation from the school system, it's still, from Norfolk, it's still gonna end up costing $3 million or plus for them to implement that.
That's absolutely correct, Councilman. I mean, that's how it is contemplated. specific to your request of how much is general fund. On the conference report in your Dropbox,
I'm
page
looking at
6, you even see my hand notation. I only had one copy of this presentation. It shows you what the actual I've called out what the general fund take is over a 5-year period, and from implementation to 5 years out, it's approximately $700 million that normally would be going to the general fund.
And we don't know the local impact on that yet.
No, sir, we don't have the sheets out just yet.
Well, the original plan is put forward by the governor had 800 million being diverted. This has 700 million, and it has the possibility of being backfilled by the federal tax, which is, that's an iffy proposition. Yeah, that's an unknown. The additional funds from the General Assembly for the 2% raise, Tommy, I do think it covers. There was some concern there was just going to be the SOQ teachers and no staff, and certainly not the additional teachers.
Right.
But I think it covers staff, doesn't it? I mean, the language I saw said not only the teachers.
It does cover some administrator.
Yeah.
It's SOQ though.
So
It's not-
so I asked Sabrina, I guess yesterday, if she knew what that was going to mean in additional funds for the 2%, but and the policy guidelines haven't even really been put out yet. So I guess we'll probably know in a few days exactly what that means, but I got to believe it's going to be somewhat helpful than us trying to lift the 2% all by ourselves, which is about $4.6 million, I think, to give 2% to the entire city. I mean, to the entire school system.
Yeah,
So
school system has worked that into their budget.
into
The
their
rec-
budget.
Yeah,
So, but I don't know that they actually went so far as to put state money into that.
they did. It was asked at the board meeting.
And they're reporting it as a bonus versus.
But I mean, this will be these should be additional funds over and above what we hope. Yeah, okay. All right.
Yeah.
Hey, Brian, I'd give you an A too, except, well, I give you an A. And I,
But this
think
dropped
you
your
did
grade.
great. But yeah, this
This
is
definitely dropped your grade.
25 minutes.
Yeah.
With the
It's
time,
about the schools.
we were at the forefront,
I
actually
know.
driving the discussion. So it related to Councilman Smiegel's comment, to be quite honest, sir, in the political context of this General Assembly, there was no way to get a transportation deal without some level of general fund taking. So the mayor was right. We reduced it by $100 million, and we got some provisions that, in case the Marketplace Equity Act doesn't happen, it triggers an automatic funding source for the education.
I just haven't seen any real efforts by any of our delegation, anybody, to really push this issue of all these costs coming back on local governments. And I mean, well, anyway, I have my conspiracy theories of what they're trying to do with schools and other things, but it's pretty sad that there's not a champion up there really trying to stop this. And when you have a proposal like casinos, to me, it's a no-brainer that you try to help the localities find more revenue if you're going to take it away from them, and they fight that. They just.
Great. Okay, thank you, Brian. Thanks.
Mayor, as member of council, in January, we gave you a presentation based on the recommendation of the Planning Commission with regard to food trucks, mobile vendors, and the like. The purpose of this presentation is to actually bring a recommendation to you. We will touch on a couple of areas that there were several questions about that I want to provide additional information with it as it relates to the operation of vendors in Norfolk. As a reminder, in response to an application by an applicant on behalf of Revision Norfolk, the Planning Commission recommended the following: that the downtown zoning district uses be amended to allow for vending on public and private improved property, that the ordinances governing vendor operations be amended for the time specifically to allow for operations until 2 a.m., and that the 1 hour duration restriction for mobile vendors, which are motorized vehicles, be eliminated. Visually, this is a reminder about currently the zoning districts are highlighted in green for where vendors are allowed to operate, and then the downtown districts, D1 through D5, are highlighted in yellow. Specifically zooming into that, this is based on the Planning Commission recommendation that vendors would be allowed to operate on these properties that are highlighted here. The yellow being the city of Norfolk public properties, the green being private properties, and they're highlighted here to represent where there would actually be parking opportunities for that. As a reminder, we did have a review about the different types of regulations across the nation, particularly in the large cities where this type of activity is very common. These similar debates are happening all across the country. Norfolk has some of these elements. Public property bans are private property is most often allowed. You often have restricted zones, proximity bans, stop and wait restrictions as we have, and also relation to duration restrictions. There were some questions about the actual operation, licensing, permitting for these operations. And in the very simplistic terms, vendors are required to operate, obtain the same permits, licenses, and fees, pay the same fees as food establishments. They include a business license, you must pay a meals tax bond up front. You have state health permit granted by our local health department. They are required to have a food service manager that is certified, and also all employees must have food handler cards. Additionally, the health department has a very close relationship with the operations of the vendors. Vendors are encouraged to have a daily commission in order to facilitate cleaning and servicing operations, food storage, renewal of supplies, proper disposal of liquid waste such as grease. For push carts, they are actually mandated by the health department. For a mobile vendor, if they have appropriate facilities on board and a connection to power, then they are permitted to actually have that also operate as the commissary. Many vendors actually do have a relationship with the restaurant so that they have that ability to have that commissary. Both the mobile units and the commissaries are inspected by the health department. Vendors, as mentioned, must have food service managers, employee handler cards, and then additionally they're inspected by the fire marshal. In some cases, we have vendors that have commissaries outside of the city, so even those fire marshals in other cities that have additional restrictions, such as in the city of Chesapeake, where one particular vendor operates out of commissary. Their menu drives what type of equipment they have, which means what type of fire suppression they might have. And so the fire marshal actually weighs in on what they recommend or what they require or not allow to actually be cooked on the vehicles, depending on whether or not they have certain fire suppression systems. This is an example of commissary. Typically, you have to have the appropriate sinks. Again, the disposal for those liquid waste, refrigeration, etc. This is an example. We could leave it here and move forward with the Planning Commission recommendation. However, the last presentation, I did go over several different alternatives for consideration if you wanted an alternative recommendation. We're going to give you one this evening if this is something that you would like to consider. In doing this, what we did was take in several considerations. As you know, there's been a significant amount of benchmarking and analysis on this issue. We looked at public health, the issue with the vesting of property uses if you did do a change of use in zoning, taxes, permits, fees, what type of vehicles there are, the idea that we want to activate public spaces. We looked at pedestrian access, proximity to existing restaurants, that there is an opportunity for vendor success, and that possibly there's an opportunity for a phased approach. And so with all those considerations, we built a framework that looked at specific places, specific times, specific vehicles. We'll update the vendor codes and take an incremental phased approach to bringing this type of operation to the downtown districts. For recommendation for places, we recommend that we designate parking spaces in the public right-of-way, and that parking permits be issued by the administration through a lottery system for metered spaces. We also recommend that we have an increase in special events in the public right-of-way, some of which parlays right into the discussion that we had earlier about the Open Streets initiative. And then that special events be designated for Scope Plaza and Town Point Park, or the Nauticus Plaza, for city and private sponsored events. The spaces we would recommend at this time would take an incremental small approach first. 6 total spaces, metered spaces again, Granby Street north of Brambleton in the Arts District area, at Freemason Street just off of Granby, at MacArthur Square, and then in MacArthur Square at Bank Street. These are the images here. These are the metered spaces just north of Brambleton. That could be an opportunity.
Is that a townhouse?
ma'am.
Is that the back of the courthouse?
That's the federal courthouse, yes.
Okay, so that's down the street from the bus, the Greyhound bus
It's near
terminal?
Greyhound, exactly. And Human Services is near the Arts District, yeah. So
Okay,
there's Human Services, Greyhound is nearby.
okay.
Freemason Street, we have two opportunities here. How well we know with impending construction for this development that's happening on this corner, the corner next to the Granby Municipal Building might be a better placement for that. Plume Street at MacArthur Square, obviously the square is a great venue for, especially with the light rail station there, with lots of public activity that can.
So you're talking about putting a truck there?
Yes. And then around the corner on Bank Street, within sight of MacArthur Square. Again, all the considerations that I mentioned before, particularly in proximity of any existing bricks and mortar restaurant, was taken in consideration for all of these specific spaces. Recommendation for times. As you recall, our existing standard is for Monday through Friday, it's 6 a.m. to 9:30, Saturday to Sunday, it's 8 a.m. to 9:30. The Planning Commission recommended extending the evening to 2 a.m. We would recommend until midnight, and also moving the time, if we're going to change the ordinance, to moving the time on Monday through Friday up to 7 a.m.
When we have people who come down here coming to work, like the Coast Guard and the police and the sheriff's office, who work shifts, why would we not allow them to open up until 7 o'clock in the morning? Some of the people who come to work down here have to be to work at 7. So if they were allowed to open at 6, then people could come early, they could grab breakfast or whatever and go on to work. Why 7? What is the 7 o'clock? I mean, what
During our analysis, there was
theory?
different input and different issues. This was one that came up, that was a recommendation that perhaps the existing standard at 6 a.m., which really hasn't ever been tested in the downtown environment, might be too early a time. So it's a consideration.
So they
Wouldn't
could be
that
the
be
ones
more
that
of a
test it.
decision of the food truck though? I
Yeah,
mean, why wouldn't we open it up till 6 and then they could figure out if it was profitable? They're not mandated to open at 6, are they?
yeah. If they wanted to be open at 6 o'clock and nobody's there, then they would push their hour to 7. But I think that if they want to be up with the birds and people are buying food, let them be up with the birds.
I'm also curious why you decided to stop at 12. I mean, if we have an argument here about existing restaurants, no restaurants serving food at 12 o'clock, that's the time when, and the Downtown Civic League has approved having it open till 2, so what was your rationale on closing at 12?
Again, incremental approach. We don't know what the impact is or is not
Right,
on
but we
the
don't want to
streets
set these
at that hour.
businesses up to fail.
The vendors that I met with, most of the vendors that operate this type of business, most of them did not have a desire to operate after midnight. That
But
was
then
where-
aren't we again just giving them an option? If we do it at 2 a.m., they get to make that call?
Yeah.
So
I
what's
mean, if
the
they want
point?
to shut down at
No, but there are
midnight.
also people who live down here.
But,
I mean,
and
there are
those people have
who-
voted in support of
Well,
being
I
open
wouldn't know
at
that
2?
they've all,
Well,
voted,
are we
and-
gonna do conjecture, or are we gonna go with what's been decided by these civic leagues?
But if restaurants are open till 2 and there's music and alcohol and all that being served till 2 o'clock, then if you're adding the food trucks, if their people are, it'd be different if it was like a
you
senior
really want
home.
the food truck open till 2 o'clock every day of the week? How come that's Monday through Friday?
Do I want a bar open till 2 o'clock every day of the week? What's the
Well,
difference?
there's a big difference. I mean, people have got, they're inside, they're not out on the street making noise where other people might be. Look, I don't think the hours are the big deal. I think the location is. 6 o'clock would be okay. 12 o'clock, things start to shut down during the week.
I vote for 2.
Okay, we vote, okay.
Me too.
I
Question
think
for
2
you.
o'clock is fair. If everybody else is open, if you're talking about being fair and everybody else is open until 2, when these people have last call at 2 and these folks are falling out of the bars and stuff.
So are we going down the road with the recommendation from the administration? And that'd be fine. That's, if that's where,
You had a couple of sites up there that I noticed that we don't have development there today, but I know that a couple of sites were prime development sites. How would that work? If the property on Bank Street was to be developed, okay, if somebody comes in town and looks at that particular site and say, well, we want to develop this here, but the city has granted a food truck to be right in front of our establishment, how would we deal with that? Because we don't want to impede development or growth downtown. 2 jobs, but you can create 25 or 30. And so how would you deal with that?
No vesting right, Ron. Right.
So then that means that you would either find another location or that location is gone. Go back to, yeah.
We would have that opportunity. That's in part, the recommendation is that you have control over the public right-of-way through the administration that, and with council input, we
We'll
can
go
look
back
at
to that.
changing, understood.
Yeah, you're right there. And it's prime real estate right there, being that the light rail station is right there. Another development parcel on that corner there. And so all I'm saying is that that truck, big white truck there, that was a food truck. And somebody came in and said, look, we want to develop this to some type of eatery or so on and so forth. What would be our posture at that point from an economic development standpoint? Would that site go away? Or would we say, well, you know, he's got a medallion or whatever we're going to give him for a couple of years now? How quick would that be that would turn around, we would take that site? Because we don't want to impede development.
Well, Mr. Vice Mayor, one of the issues is, as Ron indicated, by doing the public right-of-way, it gives much more flexibility for us to be nimble, as opposed to a situation where someone has a vested right. So we would have an opportunity to address your hypothetical, that we could do something with that spot. It wouldn't
No,
be.
we wouldn't, that's private. Somebody comes in, that gets into economic development.
Right.
I need to know right now if the city, based on their policy, has grandfather, or the person got a contract or whatever the case may be. I just want to know that in your moving into this slowly, that become, is that a part of the, can we deal with that part of the conversation now rather than later? That's not a hypothetical in my eyes, because that is a site that should be developed.
You have a lot of options, but it could be as simple as making the permit revocable.
Well, that's what I'm asking. We've covered everything, but we haven't talked about, you know, how this permit works. Can we get rid of that? I mean, can we move that site 6 months, or, you know, I know it takes time to develop it, so while it's being developed, provides a service to the people that are working there, you know, doing the construction. But, you know, after that is done and someone developed that into a site for eatery or what have you, I'm just asking, do that site now move to another place and not in front of that establishment?
What we have contemplated is that the permits would be issued at a maximum of a year. And part of what I was going to get to is that we need some vendor input on, you know, what the vendors are willing to, you know, what can they sustain in order to get the permit. We know that we need to offset the costs associated with the parking meter. So depending on what that is, it would seem that we should, for the validity of the permit and the time that's been issued, whether it's a quarterly or monthly or a yearly permit, that if that came about, then we would look for an alternative location to give the vendor until that permit expired.
Are we gonna, and see, that brings up another thought, if you will. You put someone there who has invested $60,000, $70,000 in a food truck, and they build up business at that site. If I were looking at it from a business perspective, and you all, the city, had the ability to move me at their discretion, that would not be an attractive opportunity for me, because I'm putting my money into getting started or into opening up a second location. And then, okay, well, development comes there and we want development downtown, but now I gotta up and move when I was here before anybody else thought that spot was valuable. But now the spot's valuable because, you know, I've got whatever I've got on my food truck and people are coming, and now you tell me I have to move, and I'm subject to you guys finding me a spot that may or may not be as lucrative as this spot, and my whole family's
Can't make a
livelihood.
commitment to a guy on a corner would ever
That would
ever change
food
it
truck.
downtown. Now, I
And
think
it's
that's
by its
a
very,
stretch.
by its
That's
very
been-
nature, it's mobile.
Yeah.
Oh,
I
they might
know,
not like
it's
his
mobile.
We're
boo-boo
not giving the
anyway.
guy rights to
But I
stay
never
forever
voted
on
to
a.
dedicate a piece of property downtown. It's not
If somebody
flexible
hadn't
at the
paid
will of
for
the
it.
council. And
I
I'm
think it's,
open-minded about this, but
That is
I
I
my
think it's
point.
difficult to have ask somebody to put their, to try to
If you're
generate a
willing- yes, you're willing to
livelihood.
take a
We're
piece
not
of
asking them to
property
do
and
that.
flag
They're
that
asking-
off
They're
for
asking
life.
us, actually, believe it or not, they're asking us.
If they got good food, people will find it. We're not trying to be difficult, but I would never agree to just dedicate a piece of property for not knowing what's gonna happen in this city.
I
That this is
think it
for
should be-
XYZ food truck.
For this specific spot, I'd
They
look
have
at,
to
I
be
recommend we
flexible.
have alternatives. MacArthur Square is very nearby. That's something for consideration.
We would have to work with them, but I don't, you know,
Can,
if that's gonna
can we go
become an
back and
issue.
maybe sort of resolve the hours thing? Just, I mean, 6 o'clock in the morning, unless anybody really, I mean, people seem to think six, yeah, 6 or 7, I don't guess it cares. But what about Saturdays and Sundays going to 2? And then if it looks like during the week it's no problems, we can extend that later?
Fridays and Saturdays.
Yeah, Fridays and Saturdays. Is that okay? We're just, then that is, instead of jumping into this thing, we'll do Fridays and Saturdays till 2, and then come back later on if we're not having any issues, and then, I'm told there are only 4 or 5 trucks anyway. We may have some more spaces than we got.
No, I
The
mean,
trucks,
more than
but
4 or 5 trucks, that has always been my issue, is that we have a lot of food trucks in the city of Norfolk. And so I hope that when you put this out, that all,
I'm okay with you then, Terry.
that everybody is a
Okay.
part
Tommy, everybody all
of
right?
this. You got, what, 5, 6 sites?
We have 6, and we actually recommend certain types of vehicles for certain reasons. We recommend that they be enclosed trucks and trailers because they're in parking spaces, and that they service customers through the side of a vehicle at the sidewalk only. This enhances both the pedestrian and the vendor public safety by discouraging standing in the street.
Right.
We recommend that the trailers or trucks are sized to fit in our parking spaces. Typically, they're 8 by 22. There are some that are larger. And that all vehicles, regardless of the type of vehicle, would be permitted when and if we have it on actual property, such as the Scope Plaza special event opportunities or the Nauticus or Town Point Plaza.
So
This is what type of vehicles we're talking about. Enclosed trucks and trailers and parking spaces, but not trucks that you serve are not enclosed. That the service be out the side of the
Right.
vehicle at the sidewalk. And that these would only be on real property for special events. And then if there was future consideration for a zoning change, that these types of
So,
vehicles would
I mean, why are you doing away with those?
No, the 3 that are downtown are vested because the use was previously part of the downtown. As long as they continue to get their business license, those 3 operators are vested. They are on
We
the
got 2,
sidewalk.
we got 1 that never shows up.
But there are 3 that are permitted, and those spots are on the sidewalk, not in the street.
So let me get this right. We're not permitting any more of those downtown, but we're gonna move to permit 6 of those.
In the incremental phased approach, yes.
That's ridiculous.
And what's the
That
difference?
is, let me finish my point.
No,
We,
look,
hold
can we, why don't we?
on. We've had a lady that's been down here for about at least 3 years, talking about trying to get a space downtown to serve her hot dogs, okay? And these trucks, this thing came about, and it's jumped over those types of vendors and gets first priority.
No, she should
And
be
I
good.
thought that was all a part of this. That does not sit well with me. She should be a part of this equation. There is no way that, I would hope that this body would not vote on something
We're not
that's
prepared
not
to vote.
all inclusive.
Yeah, and we're gonna have plenty of time to talk about this. In fact,
That's ridiculous.
Andy's not here, and I know he has some special interest about this. Why don't we just, unless there's one more question,
Well,
why don't we stop and continue this till next week?
Yeah.
Okay,
and I know you have something else on the agenda, but I bit my tongue through this. And I wrote down angry on my pad, because what I'm angry about is about process and how our city government is operating right now. And we had a process in which somebody put in an application, it went through planning, and a recommendation was made. And somewhere, another recommendation is being proposed. And are we setting a precedent now when we have controversial issues like this, even though a process was followed, that there is going to be other recommendations made? I want to vote on what the Planning Commission sent us. I thought that's what our process was, and now all of a sudden, we have a completely different process. And it's the same thing with chickens and other things that are being proposed. We basically have gotten rid of committees. We have no way of policy being made at our level. And I read an email from Drew, and I heard his application was rejected and sent back. I'm just wondering what is happening with our process, just because there were a few people who were opposed to this idea. We paid consultants to come in from Better Block, who basically stood up there and told us it's all about taking risk. And we have somebody here who's trying to take risk, and we're basically saying we're not going to do it. We're going to change everything that this person proposed. They went through the process, planning recommended it, and now we're getting another option. So are we going to do this now for every single controversial thing that comes up? Are we going to get options to vote on? It's a statement. I don't need a response.
Well, I think personally that maybe management read into this that there were people that wanted to maybe tiptoe in rather than go in full speed and test and then work a way into a full-time situation. We're trying to come up with something that would that might work rather than all in that might not work. I think they read at least I'm not putting words in their mouth, read a mixed message that we need to move slowly.
Let it come before council as recommended by
But then if
planning.
it gets defeated, it goes back.
So then that's the process. That's what it is.
Then we,
Then what?
it's an all, I'd rather not
Staff
be an all or none
Staff
situation.
made recommendation when it went through planning they made their recommendations. So why did it get to another point of more recommendations and more changes to it? The planning commission who we appoint made a decision.
Okay, we'll take this up at the next meeting, okay? All right,
Well, I think,
thanks.
I will just say very quickly, I was frustrated about it too, but I think there's another level in here, and that is that it was figured out by our legal department, am I correct? That the process was not something that could happen from a private individual to produce an ordinance in front of the planning commission. Now, I'm curious about why that was looked into legally, but anyway, from what I understood, that's how we ended up doing this now, because the original ordinance did not follow the legality of planning commission.
Well, you guys sure are privy to information that other council members are not privy
No,
to.
actually,
So,
Tommy Drew had that in the article, in the letter.
I just want to know how the carts got bumped completely.
Yeah,
That's just ridiculous.
I agree with Anthony. We need to open up to everybody.
That is absolutely unacceptable.
Okay,
So we're going to talk about this when?
next week, next time we meet.
And when will we'll vote on it in 2 weeks from then?
I think we're trying to get to a point where, first of all, where we have an ordinance that stands legal scrutiny. Because there are some people in downtown, whether you believe it or not, restaurant owners and others who don't want this thing to happen. They have a voice, and I don't think we ought to just pretend they don't and move forward with something like this until we can have, as Barclay said, something that moves in that direction that would satisfy some members of council, some members of the public, without doing any damage. Otherwise, you know, we can just bring the administrations, I mean, the planning commission's vote up here and see if it works.
But are
Because
the-
it may not get enough votes.
but is the administration listening?
Yeah, I don't, but
I know, I mean, I asked that question because, you know, when this came up before, I sat right here and spoke about the lady with that has been trying to get her hot dog cart downtown Norfolk for X number of years. And then you come in with a presentation today that excludes that opportunity, but grandfathers one who has not been downtown in years. You know, when you have one of the biggest projects taking place in the city of Norfolk, and he has one of the prime spots, he has not brought a cart down here. Nobody's seen him, and you're telling me we can't make concessions? I mean, that's unacceptable.
Okay.
Unacceptable.
all right, we'll work it out Tuesday, next week.
Thank you. Mayor, member of council, tonight's presentation is on a real estate tax exempt application received from First Baptist Church of Norfolk.
It's actually First Baptist Church of Butte Street. That's not First Baptist Church of Norfolk. That needs to be corrected. First Baptist Church of Butte Street is out on Norfolk. It's on Kempsville Road.
I believe this information was taken off of the application that was submitted, both for First Baptist Church of Norfolk, Inc., as well as Shepherd's Village of Park Avenue.
First Baptist Church, Butte Street.
Mr. Riddick,
Uh-huh.
that's their correct corporate name for their
Is it?
501(c)(3). Yes, sir. I
Oh,
just
okay.
checked. Yes, sir.
The action of council is the request to schedule a public hearing is on tonight's consent agenda. As you may recall, the process for reviewing the applications changed back when the General Assembly enacted new legislation allowing local governments to authorize the designation. The classification still remains with the Commonwealth for properties owned by the federal government, religious institutions, private and public cemeteries, as well as non-profit public libraries and institutions of learning. The designation allows City Council, based on a variety of recommendations that are included in the code for criteria, to authorize a real estate tax exemption, again, by City Council's designation. Involved in the process, as I alluded to, is the application is submitted to the real estate assessor, who evaluates it and forwards it on to the city attorney for their evaluation, and then ultimately to the city manager for docketing. The next two slides provide you with a brief overview of the existing tax exemptions by designation that council has approved. You'll see the four most recent ones at the top of the page, 2 in 2011. There were 2 in 2009. 4 Kids had 1 in 2008 as well. And then there were the 5 in 2008. That's the extent of the real estate tax exemptions by designation since January 1, 2003.
Are those ongoing, Darrell, or they're ongoing? Once they're exempt, they're ongoing?
Yes, they are.
Is that correct?
They're
I believe, the
exempt.
assessor would add that they do a triennial review.
Right, okay, all right, the form, okay, all right.
They're
Okay.
exempt as long as the council
Okay.
doesn't change it.
Okay, all right.
Some information from our Norfolk Air on Shepherd's Village. It's on Park Avenue at 805. It's used as an assisted living facility. Our information shows that it was constructed in 1970 with just under 14,000 square feet. A minute ago, I alluded to the criteria. This is the same criteria that was used for the 6 most recent ones in 2012 and 2011. Address, of course, the First Baptist Church of Norfolk, Inc. is a 501c3 by the IRS. The properties in question for Shepherd's Village of Park Avenue are assessed at just over $820,000, which results in a revenue to the city of $9,110. And then the remaining 7 items are questions, essentially. Is there public benefit? Yes. Are there significant donations received? Yes. The property use is assisted living. Is there reasonable employee compensation? Yes. Individual employee benefit? No. Standard political activities and alcoholic beverage license? No. These are the things that the General Assembly suggests that council consider in evaluating real estate tax exemptions. Again, the assessor is here this evening, the attorney's here. On tonight's consent agenda is the request to schedule a public hearing, which would be followed by the public hearing and formal consideration of the ordinance, should council desire.
Okay. Just on the consent agenda tonight, just to schedule it.
My question is this. We had a meeting, I asked that the administration bring the entire case into this body so they could understand it from the first application until this point. And the reason for that is because there's a lawsuit pending that's over our head as relates to this. I think this body is entitled to hear all of the information as relates to the implications that not just this, but there are other organizations who fit the same criteria. Okay? And I want this to be understood because we have to treat people the same. We have to be fair about our processes and we have to be open about our processes. And so every council member should get this. And they deserve a full presentation. You know, because we went down this road in 2002 with the House of Prayer. And I hope they come back with their application based on this, based on the criteria that we are using today, because we took them all the way to the Supreme Court and set a precedent as it relates to how this is done. So I'm just saying, at the end of the day, everybody at this table should have an understanding of what this means to the city of Norfolk. So this COGIT and a lot of other entities that are up here qualify under the criteria which we're using today. And I want to understand, as a taxpayer first, as a council person second, what are the implications of the lawsuit that's sitting over our heads if we move forward on this and pass it? Mr. Pishkin.
There is an outstanding lawsuit asking that the court determine that it's exempt by classification,
Right.
which Darrell has just explained is different from this request for designation. And the church has informed us that if the council were to grant the exemption by designation, they would dismiss their lawsuit. And it has been nunsuited once, so that a second dismissal would end the lawsuit for all of the time in question. So that you had asked us to check, and I'm sorry if we didn't let you know, the church has indicated they're willing to dismiss their lawsuit if the council exempts it by designation.
So in other words, they're keeping their options open and they're not putting all their eggs in the proverbial council basket.
Right.
Is that what you're saying?
Right.
Well, we still have exposure too. And our exposure is, we pass this, we give them their exemption. They have the law, part of that lawsuit is to get their money back. We have a policy here where we exempt, and it's not retro. It goes forward, which I wouldn't have a problem with. But what I do have a problem in this particular case, they can go back as far as 8 years, plus 10%. Okay, so that to me is something that's important as it relates to this discussion.
Can we ask Deborah Vaughn, why in the language today it says that you recommended that it's, you reject it? Do you have rationale from your office?
Yes, I did. The first and main reason is the court case that Anthony was referring to. The second reason is that the spreadsheet that he has that was sent to Marcus but not included in the presentation, there are 18 other properties that fall into the same category that I would have to treat equitably. I can't give recommendation for one and let the others stay taxable. And then the third reason was the state Supreme Court decision, not on United House of Prayer, but on the Westminster Canterbury in Virginia Beach, which is a typical retirement home community. That decision also indicated that the property should remain taxable, or at least the majority of that property should remain taxable. Those are the three reasons, three main reasons. Also, I've seen this application evolve. There've been approximately 3 different applications since 2009, and I've seen the facts evolve as the stages take place. And I just don't believe that this property is any different than the other 18 that we're looking at as far as tax exempt to be considered.
But they're not, the other 18 have never been tax exempt. Is that right or wrong?
One of them was the Valentine,
Right,
but it
okay.
is now taxable
Right.
as it changed hands.
So what I'm saying is that this facility at one point was not taxed. And for some reason, some person who had just started working in the assessor's office determined in their mind that it should be taxed, just like the House of Prayer. And so when this happened, prior to you, and so what falls with the other 18 should have no consequence on these. They should not be held hostage because other individuals might have that same opportunity. It's up, each case is looked at individually. So we can't hold them hostage because there are other 18 persons who could do the same thing.
With regard to United House of Prayer and with this particular piece of property, it was during the triennial recertification process where it was determined that these properties did not meet the criteria for exemption by classification. It wasn't some new person on board that made the decision. The process was adhered to. The real estate assessor at that time made the final decision.
Okay, we've got to start the meeting at 7. What the consent agenda does tonight is schedule the hearing, I think, for March the 26th. Between now and then, I think Anthony's made a good point. We needed everybody to get up to date on what's being asked of us here.
Right.
And we can talk it out short of and then have the public hearing. Okay?
And by getting up to date means we get all the information.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all up, and we
That'll
can,
all be sent to us.
but we should get it before the 26th. Well, we should have a discussion before the 26th about this. It apparently has some history. Okay?
Friday, just put it in the packet.
Yeah, but we need a little time to talk about it too.